There's a moment that happens every year that most people barely notice. The air changes, the light softens, sounds travel differently. For some people, this is when they finally start to breathe. While others complain about the cold, the darkness, the inconvenience, there's a quieter group who feels something else entirely. Relief, clarity, calm. They don't love winter because it's cheerful. They love it because it's honest. Winter strips the world down. Trees stop pretending. Streets empty out. Conversations shorten. There's less performance, less noise, less expectation to be bright, social, and visible. And for certain nervous systems, that feels like permission. People who love winter are often misunderstood. They're told they're gloomy, antisocial, or negative. But liking winter isn't about enjoying discomfort. It's about what winter removes. Summer adds, winter subtracts. And some people function better when there's less to process. Think about how winter changes behavior. People stay indoors, social calendars shrink, there's no pressure to go out, to be seen, to participate. Cancelled plans feel acceptable, solitude becomes socially sanctioned. For people who are overstimulated the rest of the year, this isn't depressing. It's regulating. Winter lowers the volume of the world. Psychologically, this matters more than we admit. Some brains are highly sensitive to sensory input, noise, movement, crowds, heat, brightness. During warmer months, stimulation comes nonstop. Summer isn't just a season, it's a demand. Be active, be visible, be outside, be happy. Winter breaks that contract. When the environment becomes quieter, these people don't feel bored. They feel balanced. Their nervous system finally matches the pace of the world. There's also something important about light. Shorter days mean less visual stimulation, less harsh brightness, less constant alertness. Darkness, contrary to popular belief, can be soothing. It signals safety, rest, and inward attention. In evolutionary terms, darkness meant staying close, conserving energy, and focusing on what mattered. For modern humans who are mentally exhausted, winter recreates that rhythm. People who love winter often have strong internal reward systems. Their brains don't rely heavily on external excitement to feel alive. They get satisfaction from reflection, routine, and depth rather than novelty and intensity. This is closely tied to acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter associated with calm focus, introspection, and sustained attention. While dopamine-driven brains seek stimulation, acetylcholine-driven brains seek meaning. Winter is rich in meaning. There are fewer distractions, fewer social obligations, fewer interruptions. This creates long stretches of uninterrupted mental space. And in that space, these people don't feel lonely. They feel present. Another overlooked factor is control. Winter is predictable. Cold behaves consistently. Darkness arrives on schedule. There's comfort in that. For people who feel overwhelmed by chaotic environments, winter offers structure. You know what to expect. You dress accordingly. You plan less. You stay in. It's a season that doesn't demand spontaneity. And that's not a weakness. That's a preference for stability. Winter also creates contrast. Warm rooms feel warmer, lights feel softer, silence feels deeper. Psychologists call this the contrast effect. When the outside world is harsh, the inside becomes meaningful. A cup of tea isn't just a drink, it's a ritual. A blanket isn't just fabric, it's safety. People who love winter often create small, controlled environments that feel emotionally rich. Candlelight, quiet music, familiar routines. These aren't escapist behaviors. They're grounding behaviors. It's the nervous system saying, this is enough. There's also something else happening beneath the surface. Winter gives people permission to slow down without guilt. In most seasons, slowing down is framed as laziness. In winter, it's framed as practicality. Rest becomes acceptable. Stillness becomes justified. For people who are naturally reflective, winter aligns with their internal tempo. They don't need constant motion to feel alive. They need coherence, and winter provides it. Loving winter isn't about liking cold hands or icy mornings. It's about recognizing when the external world finally matches the internal one. When the world becomes quieter, slower, and less demanding, some people don't feel deprived. They feel seen. They're not withdrawing from life. They're returning to themselves, and this is where most misunderstandings begin. People assume winter lovers are sad. But sadness is loud. It demands attention. Winter lovers are often calm, observant, and emotionally steady. They don't need brightness to feel okay. They don't need noise to feel connected. They understand something subtle: not every season is meant for expansion. Some seasons are meant for preservation. Winter is one of them. And for certain minds, it feels like home. To really understand why some people love winter, you have to look at how different brains respond to stimulation. Not all nervous systems want more, some want less. Most modern life is built around dopamine, bright lights, fast movement, noise, novelty, social activity. Dopamine-driven brains thrive on this. They feel energized by crowds, summer festivals, long days, constant interaction. But not every brain is wired that way. Some people are far more dopamine sensitive. Their baseline stimulation threshold is lower. What feels exciting to others quickly becomes overwhelming for them. For these brains, summer isn't joyful, it's loud. Winter, on the other hand, naturally lowers stimulation. Fewer people outside, softer light, muted colors, slower movement, less social pressure. This creates neurological relief. Instead of chasing dopamine spikes, these brains rely more heavily on acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter linked to calm focus, introspection, and sustained attention. Acetylcholine doesn't reward excitement. It rewards depth, reading, thinking, walking quietly, observing, being alone without feeling lonely. Winter supports this system perfectly. That's why people who love winter often describe it as clear or peaceful, not fun. Their brain finally operates in its optimal range. There's also the matter of sensory processing sensitivity. Some nervous systems process the world in what you could call 8K resolution. They pick up on subtle changes in temperature, light, sound, and emotional atmosphere. In warmer months, that sensitivity becomes exhausting. Heat amplifies noise, bright light demands attention, crowds compress space, winter simplifies the signal. Sound travels farther but softer. Movement slows, visual clutter disappears. Colors reduce to whites, grays, browns, and blues. This reduction isn't dull for sensitive brains, it's cleansing. With fewer inputs competing for attention, the mind becomes sharper. Thoughts feel more organized. Emotions feel easier to identify. Many winter-loving people report feeling more mentally present during colder months. That's not imagination. That's reduced cognitive load. The brain isn't multitasking survival anymore. It can finally think. Another overlooked factor is the prefrontal cortex, the area involved in reflection, planning, and meaning-making. Introverted and introspective individuals often show higher activity in this region. When the world slows down, this part of the brain becomes more active, not less. So when it looks like these people are doing nothing in winter, they're often doing the most: thinking, processing, integrating experiences. Winter provides the external quiet needed for internal work. There's also an emotional regulation component. Cold temperatures naturally encourage stillness. Stillness lowers emotional reactivity. You speak less, move less, react slower. For people who feel emotions deeply, this is stabilizing. Instead of being pulled outward by constant stimulation, they are allowed to stay inward without apology. Winter doesn't demand happiness. It doesn't demand sociability. It doesn't demand visibility. And that's psychologically freeing. This is why winter lovers often feel misunderstood. They're told to cheer up or wait for summer, as if something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. Their nervous system is simply aligned with a different rhythm. They don't dislike people. They dislike excess. They don't hate life. They hate overload. Winter isn't an escape from reality for them. It's a return to a manageable version of it. And when the brain finally stops defending itself against overstimulation, something important happens. Attention deepens, thoughts slow down, meaning rises. Winter gives these minds room to breathe. And that breathing space changes everything. For many people, winter doesn't just feel calm. It feels safe, and that detail matters more than most realize. Safety isn't only physical, it's emotional. People who love winter often have a deep, intuitive relationship with emotional boundaries. They don't always like being seen. They don't always want to be expressive, and they don't enjoy being emotionally on display. Summer demands visibility. Winter allows concealment, layers of clothing. Shorter days, dim light, quiet streets. All of it reduces exposure. For some, this reduction feels like relief. Psychologically, this connects to what's known as protective withdrawal, a healthy, non-pathological response where the nervous system seeks environments that minimize emotional demand. This is not the same as avoidance, it's regulation. Winter provides natural permission to pull inward without explanation. You don't need excuses to stay home. You don't need enthusiasm to participate. You don't need a performance. The season itself justifies restraint. For people who grew up having to monitor others' emotions, winter can feel especially comforting. Children who were emotionally observant, the ones who noticed shifts in tone, tension in rooms, unspoken moods, often learned early that being quiet was safer than being expressive. They became watchers. Over time, this creates a nervous system that prefers predictability over surprise, depth over novelty, and calm over excitement. Winter mirrors that internal structure. The environment becomes more predictable. Days are shorter but consistent. Weather is harsh but honest. Nothing pretends to be effortless. There's no pressure to be cheerful, and that matters, because forced positivity is emotionally draining for people who process feelings deeply. Winter doesn't pretend, it doesn't smile. It doesn't entertain, it simply exists, and for many, that honesty feels grounding. Another key reason winter feels safe is containment. Cold constricts, darkness narrows focus, snow absorbs sound. Psychologically, this creates a feeling of being held rather than exposed. In warmer seasons, space feels infinite. Expectations expand, time stretches outward. In winter, life contracts, rooms feel cozier, time feels slower. Moments feel closer together. This containment helps people who struggle with emotional overwhelm. When the world feels smaller, emotions feel manageable. There's also a memory component. Many winter lovers associate the season with solitude rather than loneliness. Quiet mornings, long evenings, lamps turned on early, windows fogging up. The outside world distant and muffled. These moments create internal safety cues. The brain learns, I am allowed to rest here. That's why winter sadness is often misunderstood. Yes, some people experience seasonal depression. But for others, winter removes the emotional noise that exhausts them the rest of the year. It gives them control over their emotional input. They can choose when to engage, choose when to retreat, choose when to be silent. Silence, for them, is not emptiness. It's recovery. There's also an identity aspect. People who love winter often feel out of sync with dominant cultural rhythms. They don't resonate with constant productivity, visibility, or celebration. Winter validates their internal pace. It tells them, slowing down is natural. Rest is allowed, stillness is part of life. This alignment reduces internal conflict. Instead of fighting who they are, they feel supported by the environment. And when the external world stops demanding constant output, these people often feel more emotionally stable, not less. Winter doesn't numb them, it protects them. It creates a psychological shelter, not from life, but from excess. And inside that shelter, something subtle happens. Emotions become clearer, thoughts become quieter. Identity becomes steadier. Winter feels safe because it matches the inner climate of people who value depth, restraint, and emotional honesty. It doesn't rush them, it doesn't judge them. It doesn't ask them to be more than they are, it simply lets them be. By the time winter arrives, most of the world is tired. The noise has peaked, the year has unfolded. The expectations have accumulated, and for people who love winter, this moment feels like alignment. They are not energized by acceleration, they are energized by resolution. Psychologically, these individuals tend to build identity through reflection rather than action. They understand themselves by observing patterns, not by chasing novelty. Winter gives them the space to do that. When the external world slows, the internal world becomes audible. Thoughts that were drowned out by constant stimulation begin to surface. Not urgently, not loudly, just clearly. This clarity is often mistaken for melancholy. But it isn't sadness, it's honesty. People who love winter are often deeply intolerant of emotional excess, not because they lack feeling, but because they feel too much when the environment is loud. They need conditions that reduce distortion. Winter strips life down to essentials: cold, light, time, shelter. Nothing hides behind brightness or distraction. This is why winter becomes a season of identity consolidation. Without the pressure to perform, people can reconnect with who they are when no one is watching. They remember what they like, what they believe, what they no longer need. Creatively, winter lovers often experience their most authentic output during this time. Not fast creativity, not flashy creativity, but true creativity. Writing becomes deeper, thinking becomes sharper, art becomes quieter but more precise. This happens because winter encourages incubation. Ideas are allowed to sit. They are not forced into immediate expression. They are refined internally before being shared, or sometimes never shared at all. And that's important. For many winter-loving people, meaning does not come from recognition. It comes from coherence, from knowing that their inner world makes sense, even if no one else sees it. Winter also changes how time is experienced. Days are shorter, nights are longer, the future feels closer. This temporal compression helps people prioritize. They stop pretending time is infinite. They become selective. What matters stays. What doesn't quietly fades. That's why winter often triggers life decisions, ending relationships, changing direction, letting go of outdated versions of the self, not impulsively, but decisively. Because winter doesn't support illusion. It doesn't allow emotional clutter to survive. There's also a philosophical aspect. People who love winter often accept impermanence more easily than others. They understand cycles, growth, decline, rest, renewal. Winter reminds them that nothing is meant to be constant. And instead of fearing that, they find comfort in it. Stillness is not death. It's preparation. Rest is not weakness. It's intelligence. In a culture that equates movement with worth, winter lovers quietly resist. They value depth over speed, presence over productivity, meaning over momentum. And because of that, they often feel most alive when the world feels still. Not because they want to escape life, but because they want to meet it honestly. Winter doesn't give them excitement, it gives them truth. And that is why, year after year, when the air turns sharp and the light softens, something inside them settles. The world finally sounds like them.